Brexit matters a lot to us for a number of reasons, but largely because we are more interconnected with the British economy than almost any other economy in the world. Just one fact, if we add up all of our exports of goods and services to Britain, as a share of our economy, they're about 5 times bigger than for France or Germany. So it's a really big chunk of our economy. And if there were any barriers, new barriers to trade and investment across the Irish Sea, that's going to disproportionately hit Ireland. So trade, investment, anything that throws up more barriers. Not many things economists agree on, but we do agree that the more barriers you have to commerce, the less commerce you have. The worst case scenario for Ireland in the broad spectrum of Brexit possible outcomes is a hard Brexit, an acrimonious negotiation between the EU and the UK, one that doesn't come to an agreement, one that Britain decides it's going to leave the single market, that new barriers, significant new barriers to trade and investment go up between the UK and the EU, and those new barriers put a big damper on cross-border economic activity between Britain and the EU. And because we are so dependent on the UK, we're so integrated into the UK economy, hugely disproportionate effect for the Irish economy. The best possible outcome for all of this Brexit process would be for Britain to give up on Brexit and decide that actually it's better to stay in than leave. And I think that's actually quite possible. Negotiating its way out of the EU and then negotiating a new agreement with the EU will take many years, will be hugely complicated. I used to work for the European Commission and was involved in the negotiation of a trade agreement. It was a nightmare in terms of the complexity and detail involved. I think it is perfectly possible that in 3 or 4 years' time, the difficulties of trying to get out and the comparison between life outside the EU and staying in will be weighed up in Britain, and there's a good possibility that people might decide it's worth voting on the package to leave and staying in again. And in that case, I think there's a significant chance the British people would decide to stay in, and that would certainly be in Ireland's best interests. For any Irish government to mitigate the negatives of Brexit is actually quite difficult because there's a limited amount we can do. One of the few things is to quite aggressively go after the investment in the UK that is focused on the European market, but will want to be within the EU to service that market and may leave the UK. I think there's no doubt that some companies in Britain, foreign companies as well as British companies, will decide that at least some of their operation will be relocated out of the UK into the EU so they don't face those new barriers. And there is a scramble for that. Lots of people, lots of countries are looking around at that. Ireland is well placed in many respects to attract that, and focusing on that is the one big area where the government has an opportunity to proactively mitigate the risks, the downside risks.